Chapter 1381. Olivia looked worried. The day after tomorrow is fine. But, you have to go get the kids. Why? Olivia bit her lip. There's a troublesome patient. Ethan narrowed his eyes. A man. All of a sudden, Olivia felt a little guilty. She shifted her gaze and said, I've performed so many surgeries on male and female patients alike. Ethan leaned in toward her. But this man is different to you. Yeah, he's more troublesome than most other patients. That's why I remember him vividly. Liv, how many men have you messed around with? Ethan instinctively felt like there was more to the man in question. Or else, Olivia wouldn't look so wary. Olivia dove into Ethan's embrace. There has never been anyone else. It's only ever been you. That night, she didn't return to the Heath residence. She shared a night of passion with Ethan. Back when they were newlyweds, Ethan doted on her, but their feelings were too simple and frail. It couldn't weather the storm that was life. After all they had been through, their relationship had transcended a normal relationship. They were even more compatible in bed. In the past, Olivia was overly docile and subservient. He basically took the lead in bed. Olivia was a changed woman. She became more confident and optimistic. She understood that she needed to strive for what she wanted. That was why she would also provide Ethan with a lot of emotional support. Olivia was still asleep at daybreak. Ethan looked at her weary face and decided not to wake her up. He kissed her on the cheek and got out of bed. After freshening himself up, he prepared some breakfast for Olivia before leaving the villa. Olivia slept very well. She rubbed her eyes and felt the empty side of the bed, which had gone cold. It seemed like Ethan had already left for quite some time. The weather was nice, but the sunlight was a little too bright. The snow in Aldenvine had already melted. The weather had been good for some time. She went downstairs in her pajamas and smelled the food in the kitchen immediately. It was the breakfast that Ethan had prepared for her. Back when Ethan's grandmother, Eugenia, was still alive, Olivia would frequently share a meal with her by the fireplace and chat. Eugenia was a friendly person. She treated Olivia very well. If she hadn't passed away so suddenly, she could have met Olivia's children. After having breakfast, Olivia went to buy some flowers before heading to the graveyard. The gravestone that had Leia's name on it had been changed to Jody. Olivia placed one of the bouquets she had brought by the grave. Jody was a poor woman who was just dragged into a conflict she didn't ask for. Then, she went to Eugenia's grave. She set the flowers down and looked at the kind smile Eugenia had in the picture. She sat down and began talking to Eugenia. Grandma, I'm a mother now. Although Ethan has done a lot of things that made me hate him, he is still the father of my children. I also can't seem to forget about him. In the 3 years she went off the grid, she was trying to cut Ethan out of her life completely. Their reunion made it clear to her that she had never stopped loving him. Olivia left after talking to Eugenia for some time. She brought the last bouquet of flowers to Jeff's grave. There was already a bouquet by his grave. The flowers were a little wilted. They seemed to have been there for a day or so. It was clearly left by Marina. Olivia also felt bad because Marina never got to reunite with Jeff as her real daughter. Chapter 1382. Jeff looked very dashing in the picture on his grave. It was a picture of him before everything that happened to the Fordham family. Olivia bowed slightly. Dad, would you be angry if I told you that I got back with Ethan? Although Marina was the one who indirectly caused Jeff's death, Leia was the one who arranged his traffic accident. Ethan was the one who bankrupted the Fordham family. Olivia never forgot about what Millers had done. She knew she should stay away from Ethan, but she just couldn't seem to sever ties with him. Dad, you're such a gentle person. I know you wouldn't blame me even if you were alive. You only ever wanted me to be happy. But Dad, it has been so many years, and I still can't let it go. You would have been able to witness the birth of my children if you had held on for a little longer. By the way, you don't know this yet, right? Connor, whom you have seen pictures of, is actually my son. I hope this will bring you some peace of mind. Dad, how's life in heaven treating you? Just come to me in my dreams and tell me if you need anything. I'm a great doctor now. Many people come to me to get treatment. Also, I didn't hurt Marina. I just made her suffer a little when I was treating her. I hope she can learn her lesson and become a better person." Olivia talked about everything that happened in recent years. There would be gusts of winds that blew at her occasionally as if Jeff was responding to her. "Dad, I found my grandpa. If you're watching over me from above, please help me find the rest of my family. I believe they are somewhere out there waiting for me." It was getting late. Olivia dusted herself off and got up. A leaf fell on her shoulder, and a gust of wind blew it away for her. It was as if Jeff was patting her on the shoulder. Olivia turned around and smiled at Jeff's picture. "Dad, I will live my life to the fullest. I'll make a name for myself as a great doctor so you can proudly tell everyone in heaven that I'm your daughter." She turned and left. When she was leaving the graveyard, someone stopped her. "I'm sorry, miss. We're repairing this part of the path, so you can't pass through here. Please take another route." Olivia looked at the pit, which was a short distance from her. It was true that she couldn't pass through there. So, she turned back and walked toward the older section of the graveyard. Most of the people buried in this section passed away over 10 years ago. It was already noon, so there wasn't anyone there. It felt a little eerie, especially when the wind blew. It was like someone was breathing down her neck. The nights came quicker during winter. Olivia quickened her steps. As she was around halfway down the hill, she saw a group of bodyguards in sunglasses and suits. With that kind of lineup, the person buried there had to be someone important. She got curious and instinctively walked toward the grave near where the men were standing. What she saw almost made her heart pop out of her chest. "What a coincidence, Miss Fordham. I didn't expect to see you here." The man who spoke up was Ike, who stood at the corner. Olivia felt her knees go weak. She didn't forget how he had his hands around her neck back in Carathea. Ike wasn't as easy to fool as Alan. But shouldn't he be in Carathea? Why was he here? Alan and Ike were always together. Did that man come with them, too? Olivia scanned the group of men in black suits. There was only one who had a white flower placed in his breast pocket. The usually wild and arrogant eyes were bloodshot. He met Olivia's gaze. "How have you been, Miss Fordham?" Chapter 1383. Wayne was a completely different person than when he was in Raqqa. Back then, he was arrogant and unhinged. He always had his collar unbuttoned and a cigarette in his mouth like a ruffian. At that moment, he wore a black suit with a white flower in his breast pocket. His hair was carefully styled. He stood out even among a group of men in black suits. His presence made the atmosphere feel more solemn. Judging from his bloodshot eyes, Wayne really cared about the person in the grave. Olivia was surprised. Intel on Wayne didn't indicate that he was connected to anyone in Arlandia. And if this person meant so much to him, why would the person be buried in Aldenvine and not Raqqa? Olivia was nervous, but she managed to keep a straight face. "I didn't expect to see you here, Mr. Maxwell. And the grave you're visiting belongs to." She was just making small talk so the atmosphere wouldn't be so awkward. Unexpectedly, Wayne told his bodyguards to move aside. "If you're so curious, why don't you come and take a look for yourself, Miss Fordham?" Olivia waved her hands frantically. "Honestly, I'm not that curious. Also, it's getting dark out. I have to get home." "It's okay. I have to go to the Heath residence in a bit. I can give you a ride." Olivia was rendered speechless. It seemed like Wayne came here in private. That was why the media didn't talk about his arrival and why she didn't know about it. She just didn't understand why he would visit the Heath residence of his own accord. Was he here to talk to Mason about her because she stole his ring? But Olivia quickly dismissed that thought. They weren't kids at a playground. Wayne probably had important business to discuss with Mason. The bodyguards moved to the side. Ike moved forward and blocked her path. Then, he gestured toward the grave. They were in the graveyard, but there were cameras everywhere. Also, they were in Aldenvine, her turf. She had nothing to fear. So, Olivia walked toward the grave. It would seem like this meeting was a complete coincidence. As she approached Wayne, the wind carried her scent toward him. The smell was the same that Ophelia had. He hadn't smelled it for some time. He felt a little worked up upon smelling it. After Olivia left, He tried many different fragrances with herbal options, but none were the same. None were even remotely similar. Olivia's scent, like her person, was one of a kind. She stood before the grave and looked at the picture. It was a handsome man in his 20s with a determined look on his face. Then, she saw the name, Leroy Thompson. It was a complete stranger to her. She tried looking into her memory to confirm if she had seen the name before. It was as if Wayne could tell what she was thinking. He suddenly said, "He was with me since I was just a nobody. He didn't always go by this name. We were as close as brothers." Olivia felt a little awkward. She thought it had nothing to do with her. Wayne didn't have to provide her with the man's backstory. "Mr. Maxwell, I really need to be going. Don't you want to know how he died?" Olivia licked her parched lips. "Honestly, I'm not that interested in your past. Sorry. Maybe you know that I killed Ethan's closest friend. But do you know that he killed my closest friend, too?" Miss Fordham, all lives are equal in this world. Chapter 1384. Linus was making a report back in the Heath residence. Wayne and his men arrived at the airport at 3 p.m. That's quite punctual of him. He comes to visit that grave this time of the year every year. But this time, he also asked to visit me. Linus frowned. Is it because Olivia stole his ring? He's the leader of a nation. He won't bring up something like that without concrete proof. Mason squeezed a stress ball and said, "But just to be safe, tell Olivia to stay away. It's best if she doesn't meet with him. Olivia didn't come back last night. She should be at her own home." "I'll check." Linus called Ethan. "Is Olivia with you?" "She's at home. Ask her not to come to the Heath residence today. Wayne will be coming." "Understood." Ethan had been busy the entire day. He looked at the calendar. He had forgotten something. Olivia was still sleeping when he left in the morning. She had been exhausted recently, so he didn't wake her. She said she would continue decorating the house the day before. Before he could call Olivia to confirm, he received a call. He had a bad feeling. It was a call from the base. "Something happened to Jack." "What's wrong?" "Bad news, Mr. Miller. Jack hijacked a military vehicle and ran through the gate. We didn't dare to shoot at him because you told us not to hurt him." Ethan rubbed his temples. Jack had just barely recovered. He probably found out about Wayne visiting Leroy's grave and wanted to avenge Kurt. Ethan would also love to end Wayne while he was in the country. But he came to Aldenvine with a whole security team on his tail. How would Arlandia answer to Carathea if something happened to him? So, Ethan couldn't do anything to Wayne, nor did he want to. To him, the nation's interest was more important than avenging Kurt. But to Jack, nothing was more important than family. Try your best to stop him without hurting him. Ethan could feel his head throbbing. He hung up and said to Brent, "Find out where Wayne is." Brent looked at his watch. He landed at 3 p.m. It's 4:30 p.m. now. He should have arrived at the graveyard. Set up defensive perimeters around that location. Jack must be stopped. Understood. Ethan grabbed his jacket and called Olivia's phone. The call went through, but no one answered. Did she leave her phone in the bedroom? A gust blew by and ruffled Olivia's hair. Wayne looked at her silently. She was a completely different person than when she was by his side. The black fur coat made her look elegant and dignified. The pearl earrings she wore glistened under the setting sun. That was her true appearance. It was the polar opposite of the persona she created. A hint of surprise flashed on Olivia's face, but she quickly suppressed it. Like I said, I'm not interested in the grudge between the guys. Wayne took a good look at her. Then, he smiled. On the contrary, I'm quite interested in you, Miss Fordham. He took a step forward while Olivia stepped back instinctively. But the grave was right behind her. She had nowhere to go. Wayne's men surrounded them. She was like a helpless lamb surrounded by a pack of wolves. Wayne leaned in slightly. He whispered in her ear, or should I call you Septem? How have you been? Chapter 1385. Olivia kept a straight face and didn't respond to Wayne's probing. Instead, she reminded him, Mr. Maxwell, this is Aldenvine. Her expression was calm. She had cried a little when she was visiting Jeff's grave. Her eyes and nose were slightly reddened. Her eyes were also moist from the crying. She was like a cute little bunny. But Wayne knew full well that the woman standing before him wasn't a harmless little bunny. She was the S-ranked assassin, Septem. Before he arrived in Arlandia, he had already looked through all the intel regarding Olivia. Although she was an assassin, she never killed innocent people. All the missions she took were of targets who were completely evil, bullies that preyed on the weak. Olivia still had kindness in her heart. Or else, she could have killed him at any time while she was with him. Wayne smelled Olivia's scent. "Why are you afraid, Miss Fordham? I was just saying hello." Then, he took a couple of steps back. "Let's go. I'll escort Miss Fordham." Olivia felt like she was a prisoner that was being moved. She walked in the front, but she could feel a piercing glance from behind her. It was obvious that Ike was the one who was staring daggers at her. He regretted not killing her back then. He allowed a threat like her to continue to disrupt Wayne's life. They soon arrived at the bottom of the hill. Olivia took out her car keys. "Mr. Maxwell, let's part ways here." Wayne pointed at his fleet of cars. "I need to talk to you, Miss Fordham. If you please." "Sorry, we're not that close." Olivia was about to get in her car. Both of them were probing the other. Wayne wouldn't do anything rash so blatantly because they were in Aldenvine, especially when he knew of her identity. She was still worried because Wayne was an unhinged man. He can't be bound by mere common sense. That was why she remained cautious. "We've slept in the same bed." "How can you say that?" Olivia's gaze intensified. That was true. There was one night when he said he had a headache and got into her bed. She didn't dare to expose herself back then, so she could only endure his presence. There wasn't any intimacy, but would anyone believe that? "I can tell that you are close with your ex-husband. What do you think would happen if I told him about that?" "You're despicable." Olivia raised her hand to slap him, but Wayne didn't let her this time. He grabbed her wrist and pushed her against the car door. Her black coat formed a sharp contrast with the white car. "What? Are you dropping the act, Dr. Ophelia?" Wayne looked at her mockingly. "Your current face is much better. You look pretty even when you're angry. If you had approached me with this face, I would have given you anything you wanted, even that ring." Olivia didn't want to talk to him anymore. She aimed a kick at his abdomen, but he was already on guard against her. After a short bout, Olivia was firmly pressed against the car. "Nice moves, Dr. Ophelia. Stop this insolence." The bodyguards turned around in unison. They didn't dare to look at what was happening. As expected, I prefer the quick-witted Dr. Ophelia with a sharp tongue. "Will you be getting into the car by yourself, or do I have to carry you inside?" Wayne said threateningly. Olivia was stuck between a rock and a hard place. She couldn't get in the car because things would definitely spiral out of control if she did so. But Wayne was a better fighter than her. She would need the help of some drugs or tricks to gain an upper hand. When he was completely on guard, she was not his match. After all, she had only trained for a few years, while he had been put through tough situations since he was young. Other than that, the difference in strength between a man and a woman was too great. She could never win. "Are you plotting something, Dr. Ophelia? Why don't I make the call for you?" Wayne took the keys in her hand and threw it to Ike. "Drive this back for her." Chapter 1386. "Sure thing, Mr. Maxwell." Ike shot a glance at Olivia with a complicated expression. Wayne let go of Olivia. "If you please, Dr. Ophelia." Olivia looked at the bodyguarding surrounding them. She had no chance of escaping. Wayne didn't give her an option. She was forced into the car. He also got in and sat beside her. Seeing her nervous expression, Wayne chuckled. "What, are you afraid of me?" Olivia leaned on the door as much as possible as she tried to distance herself from him. But the car was only so big, there was nowhere for her to hide. She only brought her keys up the hill because her pockets were small. Her phone was in her car. She didn't expect to meet Wayne, after all. Olivia reassured herself. She was Mason's granddaughter, so Wayne wouldn't dare to do anything to her while they were in Aldenvine. Even though that was what she thought, she couldn't help but feel a little scared. She sat up straight and looked straight ahead. Of course that's not the case. She didn't expect Wayne to be so shameless. He didn't care about chivalry or being a gentleman. It didn't matter if she moved away. He just moved to the middle and closed the distance between them. Since you like sitting there, I'll help you with it. Olivia was at a loss for words. She was pressed against the door without any extra space. Their clothes were unavoidably snugly pressed against one another. Olivia was grateful for the cold weather in Aldenvine. If they were back in Raqqa, the heat would make things quite awkward. She just wanted to get back to the Heath residence as soon as possible so this hellish encounter would end. Dr. Ophelia, I know all about you and your ex-husband. I feel bad for you. Olivia gave him a cold smile. Thank you. Wayne unbuttoned his sleeve and pulled it up to reveal the expensive watch he was wearing and the black ring on his left hand. It was like he was mocking Olivia for trying so hard and accomplishing nothing. Do you like this ring, Drive? Ophelia. Olivia shook her head. No, I don't. Really, I thought this ring, for which you risked your life, would matter to you. That was why I got a new one made. He took another ring out of his pocket. It was smaller, clearly a woman's ring. Wayne held the ring before Olivia's face. This ring has the same functions as the one I'm wearing. Olivia's expression changed drastically. What do you mean? Wayne had a nonchalant smile on his face. I told you I can give it to you if you want it. That was a key to his military base. Was he out of his mind? Your mission won't be considered a failure if you take this ring with you, right? He was like the devil as he tried to tempt Olivia. I'm sorry, Mr. Maxwell. I have no idea what you're talking about. Olivia was prepared to feign ignorance to the end. The reason she accepted that mission was to get closer to the boss behind the Black Ravens. It was so that she could get to the bottom of the assassination that happened to her back then. But she didn't have to go through with it. She would rather conduct her own investigation than deal with Wayne any longer. Everything had a price. She would have to pay a great price if she wanted that ring. Dr. Ophelia, it would be boring if you keep playing dumb. Wayne leaned toward her. Olivia frowned. Mr. Maxwell, please watch yourself. Dr. Ophelia, do you know? Before he could finish his sentence, a gunshot rang out. A bullet was shot at the window, right where Olivia's head was. Chapter 1387. The three people in the car were shocked by this sudden development. Olivia would already be dead if the windows weren't bulletproof. Watch out! That bullet was an armor-piercing round. It wasn't enough to punch through the window, but it was embedded into it. Cracked appeared all around the bullet. Then, a second bullet and a third one followed. The glass finally broke with a loud crash. Wayne reacted quickly. When the first shot was fired, he immediately pulled Olivia down to the floor of the car and pressed against her. The gunshots didn't stop coming. They broke through the left window and even shot through the one on the right. Even the doors were being riddled with bullets. It was total chaos. Ike steadied the car. Be careful, Mr. Maxwell. Wayne turned his gaze to look at Olivia, who was under him. He thought a woman would be nervous in such a situation. Unexpectedly, she looked angry. She yelled, I told you I didn't want to get in your car. Olivia was incredibly unlucky. Sometimes, she even thought she was cursed. There was also an assassination attempt that one time she was out with Ethan. She almost died that time, too. Another attempt on Mason's life happened when she was present. At that very moment, there was yet again an assassination attempt while she was in Wayne's car. Why was her life so hard? She had barely enjoyed a few days of peace. Wayne smiled as he looked at her troubled expression. You're truly a fascinating one. You'd better take care of yourself first. Wayne's expression became tender all of a sudden. It would be great if we could die together, too. Olivia headbutted Wayne on the forehead. Both of their heads throbbed from the impact. Stop that bullshit. I don't want to die alongside you. Olivia was rendered speechless. How could he joke at a time like this? The enemy was so vicious. It was clear they were determined to kill him. She was already in the car, and it was too late to get out. If the enemy were too violent, she would end up dead, too. She hadn't even spoken to her children yet. Wayne wasn't acting like a nation's leader at all. He didn't care if he lived or died. Instead, he was quite captivated by Olivia, who was in such close proximity. Her black, Glossy hair was spread out on the leather cushion, cascading beautifully all over. Olivia didn't put on any makeup that day. Wayne could see how good her skin was as they were so close. He felt an urge to reach out and touch her. Wayne was the type of person who preferred to act before thinking. His finger was already poking Olivia's pouting face when that thought popped up in his mind. Olivia grabbed his collar angrily. He was dressed so nicely, but he was still as unhinged as he always was. "What are you doing?" Wayne also realized that this wasn't the time to do something like that. "Well, I just thought that your face looked like it was elastic." Olivia bellowed, "Are you out of your mind? Don't you already know the answer to that?" Wayne wasn't in the mood for pretenses anymore as he smirked at her. "Also, since you're already divorced, why don't you try it with me?" Olivia glared at him. "Try what? Man, your brains are about to be blown off. What nonsense are you spewing now?" Wayne said seriously, "I mean it. You can try whatever you want. A marriage or a bed. I won't lose to him. How many times can he do it a night? I can definitely do more." Olivia covered his mouth. "Shut up, you pervert." Chapter 1388. Olivia had a bad feeling when the gunshots stopped. The enemy was so determined. Surely, they knew the car had bulletproof windows. She thought about what she would do if she were in the enemy's shoes. Olivia immediately understood when she looked at the gaping hole that used to be the window. "Wayne, you have to cover up the window," Olivia reminded him with a frown. "Don't worry, my men aren't worthless. If he wanted to go for a frontal assault, there shouldn't be any snipers. He only has a window of several seconds if he wants to get in close and personal." Wayne had a triumphant smile on his face as he raised his head to look at the two bulletproof windows that were shattered. He already missed his chance to do that. The cars of Wayne's bodyguards had already blocked off both sides of Wayne's car before the enemy could throw any explosives into his car. As expected, there wasn't any more gunfire. Olivia looked at Wayne, who was still on top of her. Then, she kicked him off. She was a little anxious. Who would be so bold as to try something like this? It was an effective method, but it was also the most risky. The reason Olivia was an S-ranked assassin wasn't because she was a good fighter. She had only been training for a few years. She wouldn't be able to match those who had been training all their lives. Olivia's biggest advantage was her proficiency with disguises and poisons. Her skill with medicine was very versatile. She might not be the most physically gifted assassin, but she was definitely one of the most well-read. She was knowledgeable on many topics and was an excellent doctor. She could bring people back from the brink of death, but she could also kill people without raising suspicion. She would always choose the safest method to carry out her mission. She would always ensure that she had a way to get out, unlike those aggressive ones who only cared about efficiency. Those people often end up in tough situations. Everyone had their own styles, but an assassin that was so careless and aggressive was still very rare. Or maybe the person after them wasn't planning on getting out of this alive. Maybe the person was on a suicide mission to kill Wayne. A face flashed in Olivia's mind, Jack. Olivia cursed inwardly. She quickly got up to see what was going on outside the car. They were on a 4-lane road, so 4 cars could drive side by side. There were cars protecting them from either side, but there was another car on the final lane. That was the assassin's car. Dozens of cars were converging behind them. There were Wayne's men and the Arlandian forces. The 3 cars were keeping level as they drove. Then, the assassin's car sped ahead. Olivia saw that the assailant was wearing a mask. She couldn't see the person's face. So she couldn't tell if it was Jack. The person was holding a grenade. Then, he yelled angrily, "Go to hell, Wayne Maxwell." As he was about to throw the grenade, he noticed Olivia. She was looking at him anxiously, trying to figure out who he was. But at that very moment, she was able to confirm that the assailant was indeed Jack. Assassins wouldn't hesitate. The key to being an assassin was being decisive, but the man hesitated when he saw her. Olivia mouthed the words, "Don't do it," at him. If he threw that grenade and killed Wayne, he would be doomed, too. Not even Ethan would be able to save him. Ethan, who was in one of the cars behind them, also noticed Olivia. He didn't have the time to think about why she was there. He yelled, "Don't do it." Chapter 1389. Jack had never felt so conflicted before. This was his best chance of killing Wayne. But if he threw the grenade, Olivia would die as well. The memories of his time with Olivia flashed in his mind. She really thought of him as a brother. While he hesitated, Wayne's bodyguards were able to catch up and line up a shot at him. Olivia could only watch as the bullet flew toward Jack. She screamed, "No," but there was nothing she could have done as Jack got shot and fell over. Only the driver was left speeding away. The cold wind blew toward Olivia as tears streamed down her face. How could this happen? If she weren't in the car, Jack would have killed Wayne. He wouldn't have hesitated and gotten himself killed. A few years ago, when she mentioned that she wanted to join the Black Ravens, Jack told her, "The biggest mistake an assassin can make is to be emotional. Only death awaits an assassin who lets his emotion dictate his actions." Even so, he still hesitated when he saw her. Wayne noticed that Olivia's reaction was a little off. "What? Was that an ex-boyfriend of yours?" Olivia glared at him fiercely. She slapped him. The slap was quick and hard. Wayne didn't manage to block it. "You fucker. It should have been you who died instead." Olivia's eyes were bloodshot. She had lost too much already: her family, friends, and her pet. Everyone that she met after that who treated her well was precious to her. Jack wasn't related to her by blood, but she saw him as her own brother, nevertheless. She swore she would never stand by and watch her loved ones die before her. She had matured. She could protect them. But in the end, Jack still died because of her. Her slap was hard. Wayne was angered by it. But when he saw her eyes, all the anger faded. "Are you okay? Let's be clear, I didn't start anything. He was the one who tried to kill me. My people were just retaliating. He deserved it." His words angered Olivia even more. She started raining blows on him. "How dare you say he deserved it? If you didn't kill his brother, he wouldn't have come for revenge. It's your fault. It's all your fault." Olivia was furious. "I don't have much family left. He's my brother. How can you kill him?" She scratched Wayne's face and left a mark, but he didn't care about that. He knew how strong Olivia was. She didn't even bat an eye when he wanted to kill her back then. But she was crying profusely, and he had never comforted a woman before. He instinctively drew Olivia into his arms. "All right, don't cry. It's all my fault. Don't worry, I won't hold it against him. Besides, he might still be alive." Olivia struggled to break free. "Let me go. We're not that close. Settle down first. You can beat me up all you like after that." Ike, who was in the driver's seat, noticed how soft Wayne had become. Olivia had him wrapped around her little finger. What would he do when they went back to Carathea? The bodyguards didn't pursue Jack's car any further due to Wayne's orders. As soon as the lanes were freed up, another car dashed right next to Wayne's car. Ethan was extremely anxious. He turned and saw Wayne holding Olivia in his arms. Wayne met his gaze, gave him a peace sign, and smiled triumphantly. Chapter 1390. Ike stepped on the gas and shook Ethan's car off. Olivia didn't know that Ethan had seen Wayne hold her in his arms. She broke free from his grasp and pushed him away. "Have some respect for yourself, Wayne Maxwell." Wayne grabbed her wrist. "Dr. Ophelia, you need to understand one thing. You were the one that came onto me before. Now, you want me to hold back. Too late." The wind blew at Olivia's hair. Her dark, round eyes were still teary. She looked very endearing. Wayne slowly reached out to caress her face. "Let her go." Ethan stared right at him. "Ethan," Wayne said annoyedly, "shake him off." Ethan also ordered, "Catch up to them." It was as if Jack's appearance was just an inconsequential encounter. Both Ethan and Wayne had their attention on Olivia at the moment. Ike and Brent were stepping on the gas as hard as they could. Both cars were speeding around in a high-speed case until they finally arrived outside the gates of the Heath residence. Linus was at the entrance with some people ready to welcome Wayne and his fleet of cars. The street had already been cleared out. The dozen or so cars came speeding down the street. The two cars in the front were especially fast. The two cars screeched to a halt almost simultaneously. The doors were also opened. Ethan and Olivia, who was in a panic, stepped out of the vehicles. Linus was confused. The assassin hadn't been found yet. Why did Olivia step out of Wayne's car? Did he do anything to you, Liv? Olivia was finally free from Wayne. She immediately leapt into Ethan's arms. Then, she asked softly, "Jack is?" Ethan replied, "Don't worry. Kelvin is on the way to him." Neither of them wanted anything to happen to Jack. Wayne stepped out from the other side of the car. His hair was a mess, and there were some scratch marks on his face and neck, which were clearly the handiwork of a woman. Even the usually calm and collected Linus couldn't help but ask, "What happened?" Wayne didn't care about the marks on his face. He looked at Olivia. "Well, Miss Olivia Heath here is a feisty one." His suggestive words gave Olivia the urge to throw her shoes at his face. "That bastard. Olivia, why were you with Mr. Maxwell?" Ethan's gaze also fell on her. He couldn't help but think about how Wayne had his arms around her. Olivia explained, "Uncle Linus, I went to visit the graves of my family members. I ran into him at the graveyard. Wayne chimed in, "I saw that it was getting late and was worried that something might happen to her if she was alone. That's why I gave her a ride." The incident on the road was completely unexpected. "I'm sure Miss Heath must have been so frightened. Are you really that nice? You're the type that just does whatever you want, aren't you?" Ethan could imagine what actually happened. Olivia would never get in his car willingly. In fact, she would have run if she could get away. Wayne didn't show any embarrassment at being exposed. Instead, he smiled at Ethan. "It seems like you know me very well, Mr. Miller. Why don't you guess what type of woman I prefer?" Ethan shot him a cold look. "We're not friends. I'm not interested in doing that. Stop talking to me." Then, he left with Olivia in his arms while ignoring Wayne. He knew that Olivia was anxious. When they went somewhere with no one around, he quickly said, "Wayne's men stopped their pursuit. Kelvin went after Jack. He should be able to find him soon. Don't worry." He felt bad when he saw that there were still tears in Olivia's eyes. "Did he do anything to you?"